So welcome to the Teach Keeping a Nature Journal with Confidence workshop. I am so thrilled to be able to share this workshop with you today. And the thing about keeping a nature journal that I have found is that so often it stumps a lot of people. It sounds so beautiful when Charlotte Mason is talking about it in her volumes. She talks about it in school education. The book, The Living Page, Lori Bestevar, gives us a good idea of what it can look like, but it still feels pretty idyllic when you think of Miss Mason in a dress out with these well-dressed children in some field, painting. So we are going to uncover the mystery of how we can start leading our children in the 21st century to use a nature journal. So, like I said, my name is Joy Cherick, and I am the mother, excuse me, of 7 children. And I have been teaching and learning about nature study for several years. I've been studying Miss Mason's method for 14 years. And when I was pregnant with our 6th child, who is now, she's really small in that picture there, but she's now 5. I really had a conundrum because I was going to have a newborn the next year, and I needed my children to continue learning in the midst of their newborn life. So that was when I really hunkered down and did a ton of research on all the different types of nature journal styles that there are out there, but then also how does one teach this to, actual children. So I have been testing these ideas with my friends in my local nature groups. I have started almost 6 or 7 in our local community because there was so much interest, especially after COVID. We've seen a huge influx of folks needing homeschool community. Excuse me. But I absolutely believe that nature study is such a foundational skill and occupation for us as homeschoolers, because it's a gateway to the habit of attention and so many other skills that we really need our children to have in order to be studious in all of their independent work and their future learning. So if you stay on until the end, I have a surprise at the very end and then a bonus for you. So those of you who are able to stay on, I would love to have you there. That was a bigger picture with me and my kiddos out on our nature walk. And then I just want to take a minute here to ask you to eliminate your distractions. I know that when you're on the screen, it's really easy to check email and check your social media because now you have this time. But I think it'll be a lot more efficient use of your time if you can set down the distractions and just put that phone down so that you can, take some notes, maybe write down some questions. I will stay on at the end for some Q&A. And I would love to have your questions there. So having your attention as we're trying to train our children to have attention when we're teaching a lesson, that is what we need for this lesson. So here's the roadmap. We are going to look at the background of teaching nature journals, and it really is a human endeavor. Then we're going to look at how it is a response to the beauty that we see out in the world. And then we are going to look at some methods for teaching the early years, school age, and then our teens. And then we're going to look at all of those practical, what are the different types of nature journal entries that we can do? And I'm going to give you some visual examples so that you will have confidence when you get going on it with your children this year. So this is one of my favorite quotes in scripture because it keeps coming up. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter. And this is from Proverbs 25. And this kind of gives us a picture into the divine curiosity that God has endowed in each one of us, that we might find something that we're curious about and then try to uncover it, try to figure out, well, what is that? Why is that happening in that way? And nature study is the perfect medium, the perfect practice to start searching out these things of God. A while back, we were at a local park, and there was a professor there who taught everybody about birds. And he was a bird specialist. Watching his demonstration, he had caught a tree swallow, and she was on her nest, and he turned her upside down, and he was banding her leg with, like, they just put this little band on them so that they can, all these scientists, they have a little repository that they put all the band numbers of all the birds that they find, and so that they can follow their migration patterns. So he was doing that, and he was turned her upside down on her belly, and he blew on her belly, and it showed the bare skin where she was able to warm those eggs with that bare body heat. It was so incredible. And I kept asking him questions, and then I got to a question, I don't remember the exact question, but he was like, we just don't know the answer. And I thought surely me, just homeschool mom, could sit here and pepper a bird expert with all the questions, and he would certainly just know the answer. And so this is this idea of God concealing. He has all knowledge, and we love to just uncover the things of God, and we can do that in nature study. So Aristotle is the first known naturalist really in the ancient world. He kept a nature journal. He wrote books on zoology. And what is interesting for us to know is that he did all of this with his firsthand observation. And so all of us can join Aristotle and just observe things up close, firsthand, and then write down our observations and then start to compare. So then he collected all his observations, and he put them into, and this is only some of the books, I shortened the list for you. These are just some of the books that he wrote. And again, this is back on, based on his firsthand observations, the movement of animals, the progression of animals, parts of animals, history of animals, life and death. He even did one on respiration, and then he did one on plants. And what I want us to look at here is just this idea of keeping a nature journal as being something that we can enter into antiquity, and it's a human endeavor. It's something that we can join in the ancients in their divine curiosity to seek out the matters of God, to understand his design and his plan for creation. And really, it just starts to reveal to us the creative imagination of our God. So, excuse me. This is a wonderful quote from Winston Churchill's Painting as a Pastime. And he says, it may be also be said that rational, industrious, useful human beings are divided into two classes. And he says, the first one, whose work is work, and those whose pleasure is pleasure. And then the second, those whose work and pleasure are one. And what he means is he really wants us to be those whose work and pleasure are one. And as we take up keeping a nature journal, as we are doing our nature study, it behooves us to take it on as a serious occupation where we are, really, again, seeking out the matters of God, really trying to apply our intellect in a way that what it does is it becomes a rest apart from the other types of occupations we have throughout our homeschool day, throughout the family life that we are cultivating. In fact, the other day, my husband said to me, "You are constantly moving." He's like, "I just have to lay down." It was a Saturday. And I was like, "Well, my day is so varied." And he'll sit for 8 hours in front of a computer. And, but mine is, I'm getting to do nature study. I'm going on a walk with the kids. We're reading Shakespeare. We're reading this other thing. It's so varied. I said each occupation breathes life in a different way. Doing nature study, it's going to exercise our brains in a different way from the grammar or the math lesson. So we can include it in our education of our children because it provides that meaningful work, especially if we take it on, as Churchill says here, as an absorbing vocation. And one more thing about Churchill I want to point out is that he took on painting in his later years during a very stressful season when there was war going on. I believe he was the Lord of the Admiralty at that time. So he said it was like I had a front seat to all of the war going on and I couldn't do anything about it but tell people what to do. So he needed a restful outlet. And what he said was painting became that outlet for him, but he attacked it with, serious, as a serious vocation. So the next naturalist we're going to look at is Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt kept a nature journal as a boy. And he also kept a lot of taxidermied animals in like one level of his New York house. They had like a 4 or 5 story home, and one of the levels had all these taxidermied animals that he would keep. But what was interesting about Teddy that we can pull from for our own children is that he started to learn about things and then he was recording them in his journal. And he kind of treated it as like a scientific notebook, but he would write down the measurement of things, where he saw things, how they were related to one another. He learned to identify birds by their call. And all of this, now he did get to go out into the country for his summers, but he did live in the city. So we can have hope that we can, even if we live in the city or a suburb, we can still bring our children to the throne of God before his beautiful creation and say, okay, like we are going to learn about God's creation even in these circumstances. Now, this is a picture of his home, his childhood home. And this is from whence he would leave the house with his father and go horseback riding in Central Park. I just thought that was fun. Okay. So now we move on to kind of how we should orient our minds around using that nature journal, because the nature journal is our response. So it's not a destination. It's not like we are wanting to have all these beautiful entries in. We need to kind of take that posture of Aristotle and take that posture of Theodore Roosevelt, where they are responding and they're recording what they've observed, what they've explored, questions that they've had. Often you can just write a question in your nature journal and leave it unanswered. These are discoveries that you make. And again, we're recording beauty to the best of our ability. So then we move on to using it to help us cultivate that power of attention. Now, you will use the power of attention for your children in your homeschool in so many areas. When you want them to listen to a beautiful story, when you need them to attend, to obey, all of these, I would say they're more spiritual things where we're trying to get them to attend. What nature study allows us to do is to take something that's physical and point it out and say, here, we are going to pay attention to this real life thing. And that will help to cultivate that power of attention. And then it allows us to study with purpose. And remember, the value is in the process. It is in teaching our children and It's not even teaching, it's drawing their attention that they might learn how to see. We want them to stop and smell the roses as this little girl is doing. So this is my son, Hudson, and he is 9 years old. And this is a quote that he says to me all the time. Hey, Mom, come see what I found. And this is what we want to be cultivating, is that curiosity. So he loves to self-educate, and he does enjoy keeping his nature journal. But I wanted to tell you a story about him real quick. So last fall, we had just moved into this new home, and the kids were out in the woods, and they come in and they have this, I don't know, it was a ball of something. It looked like a seed. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. What's that? They were like, oh, this is a praying mantis sac. And I was like, okay. I'm like, that's cool. I just learned about it. Praying mantis sacs are, kind of this round thing that the mother praying mantis will lay. It's got all the eggs in it. And like, okay, great. So he's like, let's keep it. I thought, okay, let's do it. Let's put it, we have a little curiosity cupboard where we keep all of our nature finds. Well, that was fun. Stayed there for a few weeks. And then about a month later, my kids go, Mom, there are praying mantises all over the dining room. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, oh my gosh, the sack was not hatched sack. It was a fresh sack. So what we were able to do, of course, was to get them to where they needed to be. But it's funny and it's fun because we were able to experience something together, and we also got to learn about God's creation together. We want that divine curiosity. I'm sure you do not want praying mantises crawling all over your home, but they do actually, they're not a big, that particular bug is not a big deal, because they will just eat each other, or they'll just eat all the bugs in your house and then they'll eventually be gone. So not the end of the world. But what we want is to be living that life together, using our atmosphere and our attitude to help shape the, just allowing for curiosity to blossom in that way. So this slide says not just facts and not another task. I think it's really easy to put nature journal keeping to the side because we've got, I don't know, laundry and food prep and math and reading, and the people need to also write. And we don't always know how to get started with nature journaling and nature study. But really what this discipline allows us to do is it gives us that foundation for self-education. It really leads our children in an intentional way to explore creation. So one little thing about Charlotte Mason, she really was the first person, the first educator to bring teaching nature study to children. It had always been a little bit more of an adult thing, or, like what we saw with Aristotle. This was kind of part of his work, was to do that. The very first nature journals were medical records. Essentially, they had records of plants, and they would categorize them by their medicinal purpose. And those were really the first nature journals by their usefulness. Excuse me. And what we want to do is to be fostering that love of nature study and allowing that journal to be that response. And then it really is a fun way to develop your family bonds, giving a pastime that you can share together. You're always going to be on the same level as your children. You can teach them one thing, and then that will get them going on a whole different trajectory. And then they'll come back and teach you something or point something out to you that you just did not see. And this is where the lifestyle of value and beauty, leading the children to really see what is true and to share in God's goodness. This idea that in scripture in Genesis, it says, and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And we can point to even the spider, even the praying mantis in your cupboard. God made that and he called it good. So let's figure that out. Why does he say this is good? Let's explore. So then the other thing I want us to meditate on is that we don't have to be perfect. This is a picture of a boy just jumping into the water. So it's just giving you some encouragement to just dive in and understand that they're not going to be perfect when you first get started. And not every child's nature journal is going to be an artifact that you're going to want to hold on to. It's really about shaping who we are. It's about cultivating habits that shape us and giving our children those tools that they can take with them into adulthood. G.K. Chesterton says, anything worth doing is worth doing badly. So let's just go for it. All right, so now we're going to dig into the nitty gritty. So first things, every time we sit down to do a journal, I say, hey, let's put today's date. Let's write down the weather, what's going on with the clouds today. And that just gives us a way to make that blank page less intimidating. Just start writing on it. And then this is a basic format. You can include the name. So that's another easy thing for a child to write down. And then they can start drawing their specimen. Now, this is a picture that I painted. This is not one of my children. And I'm going to go over some of the different expectations for the different ages in a minute. Okay, so what if I can't draw? This is the number one hang up for teaching nature journals. And here's the answer, or at least here's a tool. So you can use a model for a child to copy from. So if they went out, you're on your walk and they saw a butterfly, a painted lady or a monarch or whatever. Okay, let's look it up and I can find one for you. Okay, here's the shape, and you can give them a coloring page. You can just look up coloring page of what it is, or I've given you some resources. Peterson Field Guide coloring books are fantastic. I found a bunch at a thrift store and just bought a bunch of them. We don't color in the coloring books. We use them as a tool for the kids to copy when they're writing them in their journals. And then also my nature study hacking books. If you're going through a particular topic, we will always have a form for a small child or an older child who's frustrated to just copy a line drawing. And I'm showing you here the difference between a line drawing and a photograph. For a small child or a child just getting started writing in a nature journal, it can be really frustrating to try to figure out how to make all those lines and make that butterfly look how it is. So it really gives them a guide to, just print something off that they can look at. And then a small child, a preschooler, or even a 6-year-old might enjoy cutting and pasting or just coloring it in and then pasting it into their notebook. Again, this is while we're training. This is not the end result, but this is part of a tool to train the child to start to use what they see out in the world. And then this journal is our response. And then the other thing we have done is trace the pictures. So trace things either from a book or a line drawing like this. Go over to the window, stick either your paper or your nature journal at the window, and then the light behind the window will allow you an easy way to trace. So those are just some tools for getting started if you feel like you can't draw. So the next part of keeping nature journals is that there are really 4 different skills that you're combining into one activity. So you have drawing, you have using watercolor paints, you have writing, and then you also have the habit of attention. So for a very small child, it can be very frustrating to be asked to watercolor, draw something, and then write something down. So they need all of those steps broken down. An older student can certainly do those things, but if they haven't been taught how to mix paints, then it can also be frustrating. How do I make green? How do I make that green? They need to, if they haven't been taught that you can add blue and yellow and that makes green, then they won't be able to start on the right foot. So giving those foundational tools is really helpful. And then in the handout I gave you, I mentioned some resources for drawing lessons, and the watercolor lessons that we like are from Lily and Thistle. It's just absolutely basic. So then you can then as the child gets older, they start to combine all of those skills into their journal. Okay, so now we're going to talk about journals at home and journals in the field. This is another hang up that I think a lot of people have, in that they think that you can only do them in the field. And that is just one place that you can use a nature journal. You certainly may. But in our home, we found, and a lot of my friends have done this as well, is that if we can train our children how to use a nature journal at home, then when we take the show on the road, they will have been instructed on how to use it well. So it's, we're going to go on our little walk around our neighborhood, collect some leaves, collect a flower, collect a dandelion, bring it home, lay them on the table or place them in water. And then each child can choose, and they might have picked one of their own when they were out there. But then each child can choose what they're going to put in their nature journal. Because again, we want it to be a response. And then the younger ones, we can help them, write the date, and don't forget to, pay attention to what the weather is doing. And that way they're kind of all right there at the table with you, and you can help guide them on what's expected. And then when you go to the park with your friends and you all have your journals out, this is not something new. You're not trying to introduce this idea and wrangle the toddler while holding a baby on your back. So hopefully, excuse me, that was helpful. Okay. So then another objection I often hear is that my kids aren't interested, or I have a hard time getting my kids to even do it. And what I will say is, if you, one, have an understanding of how this will shape the child's heart and how it will order their affections rightly toward the things of God and what God made, then it will fortify you in those moments when the child is pushing back. So often I've said, okay, guys, we're going to do this new thing. And my kids will say, no, I can't. I don't want to. Usually it's I don't want to. But they don't even know what they don't want to do. So trying to prep it with, I want us to have an open mind. Let's get started. And then at the end, after you've done the assignment, after you've tried it, then we can talk about it. And so often I get a sheepish smile. Yeah, that was kind of cool, right? And if we are prepared for the lesson, if we give them something that will incite their imagination and kind of give them some food for thought. Maybe it's a story about how the dandelion got its name. And, it's dent de lion. It's lion's tooth of the lion. Oh, can you see how the leaves look like lion's fangs, and how the crown of the dandelion has the look of a lion's mane? I can see how they would have named it that. How fun. So it's those kind of little things here, you just pick stuff like that up here and there when you you could take 5 minutes, maybe first thing in the morning or once a week, just to prep for that nature lesson so that you have, just a little nugget to draw from. Okay. So the early years, we're going to kind of break it down by our ages. The early years, this is really before age 6. This is the time for exploring and teaching kids how to play with sticks and grass. And sometimes they do need to learn how to make a mud pie. We do need to go teach them. And playing the game, go look and tell back. Go tell me what's in that tree, or go look in the bush and see if you can find any bird's nests, and then come tell me back what you see. And this is, of course, the early training for narration and also early training for the habit of attention. In our home, we do not require nature journals at the young age. At the 6th birthday, our children are presented with kind of all of their school supplies, their nature journal and their paints, and then I allow them to really get started. Now, my younger ones do want to start, with their own little journal. There's nothing I require, and I do provide them with the materials, but I don't force it on them. So school age, the goal is for children to learn and see and observe keenly, with being outside with our children daily. And you can include a magnifying glass, an aquarium, excuse me. We use like mason jars to put little finds in to keep them for a little bit. With teens, we want to be outside with them also, and they are going to make more advanced discoveries and also more advanced drawings like this one. This was for my 13-year-old. After we saw some peacocks, we were like driving by and saw some. And the nature work can also be assigned and carried out by the student. All right, so now we're going to dig into the nitty-gritties. Types of nature journal entries. So this is draw what you see. So they're looking at a thing and they're drawing it from life. That is one option. And then this is another one of my own notebook work. This is called a study page, and it's where you record various parts and angles of one plant on one page. And you can notice here, I drew it from the flower from 2 different angles, and then I drew the leaf, or painted the leaf as well. And then I was practicing with my paints. So then over on the right-hand side, you'll see I labeled which colors I was using, and I didn't really label the flower itself. And then this is another type of study page. This is where someone has compared all the different beaks of different types of birds, and they've just placed it all on one page. So you could do this with anything, like you could put all the different kinds of leaves that are in your yard and then label them, or different types of seeds that you find in the fall, or different flowers, or even just take different petals from flowers and just draw a single petal from each one and then label what it is. This is another fun idea. I really enjoy a good study page. So this is a study page. Now this is taken from my Nature Study Hacking Insects book. This is one of the models that is used to explain the life cycle of a butterfly, but a child could easily copy this into their nature journal and to record and write down the different stages of development. You can see the little egg here, the chrysalis, the caterpillar, and then this is kind of a moth butterfly type thing. Okay, and then you can also use words. This nature journal entry is from none other than Leonardo da Vinci. You can see he has a lot of writing. It's actually written in mirror. It's written backwards. And then he has kind of the plans for some sort of a roof here. And then he has some violas that he has drawn in. So it doesn't have to just be a picture. And I've even seen some journals that are mostly words. If a family is a little bit more they just enjoy writing about what they saw, that's a totally acceptable nature journal entry. It does not have to be watercolor only. Okay, so then you could also do the draw a thing and then label its parts. It works really well with insects or mammals, but it could also work well with different parts of a tree or a plant. And then this is where I've compared 2 different species at the same time. So these two trees were dropping their leaves at the same time and their seeds. And I thought, oh, it'd be fun to compare them. So I've got the seed pod of the redbud here, and then the seed cone of the tulip poplar over here. And then I painted the leaves themselves. And then I have, a little description about what happened or what I saw. Okay, and then the other type of entry is drawing maps. Now, I put this map on here because I forgot to take a picture of the actual one. This is more for inspiration. Wouldn't it be fun to have such a detailed map like this in your journal? I think it would be. But they usually end up looking a little bit more simplistic, a little bit more like this. Drawing a map of your neighborhood or maybe even a trail that you enjoy and where it is in relationship to your neighborhood. This is such a fun practice. And it's something that smaller children would need help with, but an older child could probably use your map on your phone, or you could print off a map of your community and then they could map out some of the favorite hikes that they have or some things that they've seen that are of note that they want to remember. Okay, so all of this is included. All of these types of nature journal entries I use throughout my Nature Study Hacking series. And I currently have all of these books available. And there's one more I forgot. I also have Wildflowers. That one is not on here. So wind and water and weather, trees, stars and skies. I'm going through the entire book of the Handbook of Nature Study and doing a book for each one. And this is what some of the moms are saying about the Nature Study Hacking books. Now I'm hooked. We got Nature Study Hacking Trees and we got it in a bundle. Thanks again. And then Sonia says, this is the perfect start. I can't wait to delve deeper into the trees book and the weather book. And then Stephanie said that, hello, your service is such a blessing. I'm a new homeschooling mom and we just started using Nature Study Hacking last year. Thank you. And Beat says, I enjoy using your Nature Study Hacking guides with my kids. So there are thousands of families that are using the Nature Study Hacking series, and I am so grateful to be able to get these into your hands. So please don't forget to check your email for the bookmark. And well, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I hope this was helpful. And walk in rest. See you soon.